Chapter 1. The moment you walk into a room, the conversation has already begun. No one has spoken yet. No introductions have been made. No words have been exchanged. And still, something powerful is happening. Eyes notice you. Minds make silent judgments. Energy is felt before it is understood. In less than a few seconds, people decide whether they feel comfortable around you, whether they respect you, whether they want to engage with you or move away. This is the truth most people ignore. First impressions are not created when you speak. They are created the instant you appear. And if you do not take control of that moment, it will control you. Most people enter a new interaction carrying invisible weight. Doubt. Overthinking. The need to be liked. The fear of saying the wrong thing. Their mind becomes loud, chaotic, and distracted. Instead of being present, they are trapped inside their own thoughts. What should I say? How do I look? What if I sound stupid? What if they judge me? This inner noise destroys confidence before the conversation even begins. But here is the reality. The person in front of you is not analyzing you as deeply as you think. They are not searching for your mistakes. They are not waiting for you to fail. They are simply feeling your presence. And your presence speaks louder than any sentence you could ever construct. Confidence is not a performance. It is not about perfect words or impressive vocabulary. It is a state. A quiet, grounded state where you are not trying to prove anything. You are simply there, fully present, aware, and engaged. When you understand this, everything changes. You stop chasing perfection and start embracing simplicity. You stop trying to impress and start trying to connect. And connection is where real power lives. Think about the most memorable people you have ever met. Not the loudest, not the most talkative, the ones who left a lasting impression. They had a certain calmness, a certain clarity, a certain ease in the way they carried themselves. They did not rush. They did not force conversations. They did not try to dominate the moment. They owned it quietly. That is real confidence. And it is something you can develop. The first shift you must make is internal. Before you even think about what to say, you must control how you enter the interaction. Slow down. This is where most people fail. They rush into conversations. They move quickly. They speak quickly. Their energy feels scattered. But confidence has a different rhythm. It is steady, controlled, intentional. When you walk into a room, reduce your speed slightly. Not dramatically, not unnaturally, just enough to create awareness in your movements. Let your steps feel deliberate. Let your posture be upright but relaxed. Your body should not look tense. It should look stable, your shoulders relaxed, your head level, your movements smooth. These small adjustments create a powerful signal. They say you are in control. Now, your eyes. Eye contact is one of the strongest tools you have, yet most people misuse it. Either they avoid it completely or they overdo it and make it uncomfortable. Confidence lives in balance. When you look at someone, hold eye contact for a moment, not aggressively, not weakly. Just enough to acknowledge their presence with clarity. Then let it flow naturally. This simple act communicates respect and awareness. It tells the other person that you are present, not distracted, not intimidated. Now, your expression. A forced smile creates distance. A natural, relaxed expression builds connection. You do not need to grin constantly. You do not need to perform friendliness. Just allow your face to remain open and calm. If a smile comes naturally, let it appear. If not, do not force it. Authenticity always feels better than performance. At this point, you have not spoken a single word, yet you have already created an impression. This is your foundation. Now comes the part most people obsess over: speaking. The mistake people make is believing that speaking well means speaking a lot. It does not. Speaking well means speaking clearly, and clarity comes from calmness. When your mind is racing, your words become rushed. When your mind is scattered, your sentences become unclear. When your focus is on yourself, your communication becomes unnatural. So before you speak, pause. This pause is powerful. It shows that you are thinking. It shows that you are not reacting impulsively. It creates a sense of control. Most people fear silence. They rush to fill it because they think silence is awkward. But silence is not awkward when you are comfortable with it. Silence becomes awkward only when you are uncomfortable. When you embrace small pauses, you change the rhythm of the conversation. You slow it down. You make it more intentional. And people notice this. They feel it. Now, when you begin speaking, keep it simple. This is where many people go wrong. They try to sound intelligent. They try to use complex words. They try to impress. But complexity does not create connection. Clarity does. Speak in a way that is easy to understand. Use simple language. Express clear ideas. You do not need to sound like a scholar. You need to sound like a human being who is present and aware. Your voice matters more than your vocabulary. A steady voice builds trust. A rushed voice creates doubt. Lower your speed slightly. Let your words land. Do not rush through sentences as if you are trying to finish quickly. You are not escaping the conversation. You are engaging in it. Let your tone remain calm and balanced. This alone will make you sound more confident than most people. But there is something even more important than how you speak: why you speak. If your intention is to impress, your communication will feel forced. You will constantly monitor yourself. You will try to say the perfect thing. And in doing so, you will lose your natural flow. But if your intention is to connect, everything becomes easier. You stop performing. You start engaging. You listen more. You respond naturally. You become curious. And curiosity is powerful. When you are genuinely interested in the other person, you do not struggle with what to say. Questions come naturally. Responses feel real. The conversation becomes a shared experience, not a test. This is where most people misunderstand confidence. They think confidence means dominating the conversation. It does not. Confidence means being comfortable within it. You do not need to control every moment. You do not need to fill every silence. You do not need to prove your worth through words. Your presence is enough. Let that sink in. Your presence is enough. When you accept this, pressure disappears. You stop trying to be perfect. You stop fearing mistakes. You stop overanalyzing every sentence. And in that freedom, your best communication emerges. Because real communication is not constructed. It flows. Another important truth is this: not every interaction needs to be extraordinary. You do not need to leave every person amazed. Sometimes the most powerful impression is a simple one: calm, insect, clear, respectful. That is enough. Over time, these simple interactions build a strong identity. People start to associate you with confidence, with clarity, with ease. Not because you tried to impress them, but because you were consistent in your presence. And consistency creates trust. Confidence is not a single moment. It is a pattern. a pattern of how you enter rooms, how you carry yourself, how you speak, how you listen. When this pattern becomes natural, you no longer think about confidence. You become it. So the next time you meet someone, remember this. You do not need to perform. You do not need to impress. You do not need to be perfect. You only need to be present. Slow your movements. Relax your body. Make natural eye contact. Pause before speaking. Speak clearly. Listen deeply. And most importantly, focus on connection, not validation. This is the foundation of everything that follows. Master this moment, and you will transform every interaction that comes after it. Because the way you begin determines the way you are remembered. And powerful beginnings create lasting impressions. Chapter 2. Most conversations fail before they even begin, not because people lack intelligence, but because they carry the wrong focus into the moment. They enter a conversation thinking about themselves. How do I sound? What should I say next? Am I interesting enough? Do I look confident? This constant self-monitoring creates tension. It breaks the natural rhythm of communication. It makes every word feel heavy and forced. And the irony is this: the more you focus on yourself, the less confident you appear. Confidence is not built by watching yourself. It is built by forgetting yourself. The moment you shift your attention outward, everything changes. Instead of being trapped in your thoughts, you become engaged in the interaction. You start noticing details, tone, expressions, energy. You begin to respond instead of react. This is the difference between awkward communication and powerful communication. Awkward communication is self-centered. Powerful communication is other-centered. When you truly focus on the person in front of you, your mind becomes quieter. You stop overthinking because you are no longer trying to manufacture the perfect response. The conversation begins to guide you. This is where natural flow begins. Flow is not something you force. It is something you allow. And it starts with attention. There is a simple principle that transforms conversations instantly. People are more interested in feeling understood than being impressed. You can use complex words, clever jokes, and impressive ideas. But if the other person does not feel understood, the connection remains shallow. On the other hand, if you listen deeply and respond with clarity, even simple words create a strong bond. Understanding is magnetic. It draws people in. But real listening is rare. Most people do not listen to understand. They listen to reply. While the other person is speaking, their mind is already preparing what to say next. They are waiting for a gap to jump in. They are focused on their turn, not the moment. This breaks connection, because connection requires presence. When someone is speaking, give them your full attention. Not partial, not distracted. Full. Look at them. Observe their expressions. Notice their tone. Feel the emotion behind their words. Do not interrupt. Do not rush them. Let them finish. This simple act creates a powerful impact. It shows respect. It shows patience. It shows confidence. Because only a confident person can afford to listen without rushing. When they finish speaking, take a small pause. This pause is important. It shows that you are processing what they said. It signals thoughtfulness. It prevents reactive replies. Then respond to what actually matters. You do not need to respond to everything. Focus on the core idea. For example, if someone shares an experience, do not immediately shift the conversation back to yourself. Do not say, I also did this. I also went there. I also experienced that. Instead, acknowledge their experience first. Reflect it. Show that you understood. This builds connection faster than anything else. Once you establish that understanding, the conversation opens naturally. Now, here is another important truth. You do not need long responses to sound intelligent. In fact, shorter responses often carry more weight. When you speak too much, your message becomes diluted. Your clarity disappears. Your energy weakens. But when you speak with precision, your words land with impact. Say what needs to be said. Then stop. Let it settle. This creates authority. It shows that you are not trying to fill space. You are adding value. Another key element is curiosity. Curiosity is one of the most attractive traits in communication. When you are genuinely curious about someone, your questions become natural. Your tone becomes engaging. Your presence becomes warm. But curiosity must be real. If you ask questions only to appear interested, people will sense it. Authenticity cannot be faked. So instead of thinking, "What question should I ask?" shift to, "What do I genuinely want to know?" This changes your entire approach. Your questions become more thoughtful. Your listening becomes deeper. Your responses become more meaningful. And the conversation becomes alive. There is also a balance you must understand. Listening does not mean silence forever. At some point, you must contribute. But contribute with intention. Do not speak just to be heard. Speak to add clarity, insight, or connection. And when you speak, speak simply. Simplicity is a form of intelligence. Complicated speech often hides confusion. Simple speech reveals clarity. Use words that are easy to understand. Structure your thoughts clearly. Avoid unnecessary complexity. Your goal is not to sound impressive. Your goal is to be understood. Because understanding builds trust. And trust is the foundation of every meaningful interaction. Another important aspect is emotional awareness. Every conversation has an emotional layer beneath the words. Sometimes people speak with excitement, sometimes with hesitation, sometimes with stress or uncertainty. If you only listen to the words, you miss the deeper message. But if you pay attention to emotion, you respond more effectively. For example, if someone sounds uncertain, your response should be calm and supportive. If someone sounds excited, match their energy. If someone shares something serious, slow down and respond thoughtfully. This alignment creates connection. It shows that you are not just hearing them, you are understanding them. And that is rare. Now, let us address one of the biggest fears people have: running out of things to say. This fear comes from the belief that you must constantly keep the conversation alive. But that is not true. Conversations are not your responsibility alone. They are shared. If you feel pressure to carry the entire interaction, you'll become tense. Your mind will search desperately for topics. Your responses will feel forced. Instead, allow space. Let the conversation breathe. If there is a moment of silence, do not panic. Stay calm. Often, the other person will naturally continue. And even if they do not, you can gently restart with a simple observation or question. Keep it natural. You do not need perfect transitions. You need relaxed continuity. Another mistake people make is trying to control the outcome of the conversation. They want to be liked. They want approval. They want validation. This creates pressure. Because now every word feels like a test. But here is the truth. Not every conversation will lead to connection. And that is okay. When you accept this, you become more relaxed. You stop trying to force chemistry. You allow the interaction to unfold naturally. And interestingly, this makes you more likable, because people are drawn to those who are comfortable without needing approval. That is quiet confidence. Now consider your tone. Tone carries more meaning than words. You can say the same sentence in different tones and create completely different impressions. A calm tone creates trust. A rushed tone creates anxiety. A monotone voice creates boredom. A balanced tone creates engagement. So be aware of how you sound. Not in a self-critical way, but in a conscious way. Slow down slightly. Let your voice have variation. Allow your words to carry emotion. This makes your communication feel alive. And finally, understand this. Good communication is not about perfection. It is about connection. You will make mistakes. You will say things imperfectly. You will have moments where you feel unsure. That is normal. What matters is not avoiding mistakes. What matters is staying present despite them. If you say something wrong, do not panic. Correct it simply. Move on. Confidence is not about never making mistakes. It is about not being controlled by them. When you remain steady, even in small imperfections, you show real strength. And people respect that. So the next time you enter a conversation, remember this. Shift your focus outward. Be curious. Listen deeply. Respond simply. Speak with clarity. Allow space. Release the need for approval. And stay present. This is how you speak better instantly. Not by learning complicated techniques, but by mastering simple principles. Because in the end, communication is not about saying more. It is about saying what matters, in a way that feels real. And when you do that, people do not just hear you, they feel you. And that is what they remember. Chapter 3. There is a moment before every conversation that determines everything that follows. It is not visible to others. It happens internally, quietly, instantly. It is the moment you decide who you are going to be. Most people never notice this moment. They walk into interactions unconsciously, carrying whatever state they happen to be in. If they feel nervous, they act nervous. If they feel unsure, they speak with hesitation. If they feel inferior, they shrink. They believe confidence depends on how they feel. That is where they lose control. Because feelings are unstable. They change quickly. If you rely on them, your confidence will rise and fall constantly. Real confidence does not depend on mood. It depends on decision. Before you meet someone, you must decide your state. Not in a dramatic or artificial way, but in a quiet, grounded way. You decide that you will remain calm. You decide that you will stay present. You decide that you will not rush. You decide that you will not try to impress. This decision creates structure. It gives your mind direction. Without direction, your mind wanders. It fills with doubt, assumptions, and unnecessary noise. With direction, your mind becomes steady. And steadiness is the core of confidence. But this does not mean you eliminate nervousness completely. Nervousness is natural. Even experienced speakers feel it. Even confident individuals feel it. The difference is not the absence of nervousness. The difference is control. Confident people do not fight their nerves. They do not panic because of them. They allow the feeling to exist without letting it take over. They feel it, but they do not follow it. This is a critical distinction. When you try to eliminate nervousness, you create resistance. And resistance increases tension. But when you accept it, something interesting happens. The intensity reduces. because you are no longer adding pressure to it. So before any interaction, take a slow breath. Not quickly, not shallow. A deep, controlled breath. Let your shoulders relax. Let your body settle. This simple act signals your nervous system to calm down. It creates space between your thoughts. It brings you back to the present. Now, in that present moment, remind yourself of one principle. You are not here to perform. You are here to connect. This single idea removes a large part of your anxiety, because performance creates pressure. Connection creates ease. When you try to perform, you monitor every word. You judge every sentence. You search for perfection. When you try to connect, you listen. You respond. You engage. The shift is subtle, but the impact is powerful. Now let us talk about self-perception. How you see yourself directly affects how you communicate. If you believe you are not interesting, you will hesitate. You will hold back. You will doubt your words before speaking them. If you believe you have nothing valuable to say, your voice will reflect that belief. But here is the truth most people overlook. Value is not in saying extraordinary things. Value is in being present, clear, and genuine. You do not need to impress people with knowledge. You do not need to dominate conversations with ideas. You need to show up with clarity and authenticity. That is enough. And when you start to believe that, your behavior changes. You stop over-editing yourself. You stop filtering every thought. You allow your natural voice to come through. And that voice is always stronger than a forced one. Another important element of confidence is pace. Rushed communication is a sign of internal pressure. When you feel the need to speak quickly, it often means you are trying to escape the moment. You want to finish your sentence before something goes wrong. You want to avoid silence. You want to move past discomfort. But this creates the opposite effect. It makes you sound unsure. Confidence has a slower rhythm. Not slow in a dull way, but controlled, intentional. Each word has space. Each sentence has structure. When you slow down slightly, you give your thoughts time to form clearly. You give your listener time to absorb what you are saying. You create clarity, and clarity creates authority. Another aspect people often ignore is physical stillness. When someone is nervous, their body reveals it. They fidget. They shift weight constantly. They touch their face. They make unnecessary movements. These small actions signal discomfort. You do not need to eliminate movement completely, but you need to reduce unnecessary motion. Keep your body stable. Let your gestures be purposeful. Stillness creates presence. Presence creates impact. Now consider your voice. Your voice is one of your most powerful tools, yet most people use it unconsciously. A weak, inconsistent voice reduces the impact of even strong ideas. A steady, balanced voice strengthens even simple words. Your goal is not to sound dramatic. Your goal is to sound clear and controlled. Avoid speaking too softly, as if you are unsure. Avoid speaking too loudly, as if you are trying to dominate. Find a balanced tone. Let your voice carry confidence without force. And remember, variation matters. A completely flat tone loses attention. A natural variation in tone keeps the listener engaged. It shows that you are alive in the conversation. Now let us address another hidden challenge: the fear of judgment. This fear silently controls many people. They constantly think about how they are being perceived. Do they like me? Do I sound smart? Am I saying the right thing? This mental loop creates tension. Because you are no longer communicating freely. You are performing under pressure. But here is a powerful truth. People are not thinking about you as much as you think. They are focused on themselves, their own thoughts, their own concerns, their own impressions. When you realize this, you gain freedom. Freedom to speak without overthinking. Freedom to make small mistakes. Freedom to be natural. And this freedom is what makes you confident. Confidence is not the absence of judgment. It is the absence of fear toward it. When you stop fearing judgment, you stop adjusting yourself constantly. You become consistent. And consistency builds trust. Another important point is emotional control. Conversations are not always smooth. Sometimes you will face disagreement. Sometimes awkward moments. Sometimes unexpected responses. How you handle these moments defines your confidence. If you react emotionally, you lose control. If you stay calm, you maintain strength. Calmness is power. When something unexpected happens, do not rush to respond. Pause. Think, then respond clearly. This shows maturity. It shows control. And it earns respect. Now understand this. Confidence is not something you turn on occasionally. It is something you practice continuously. Every small interaction matters. The way you greet someone, the way you respond to a simple question, the way you carry yourself in everyday moments. These small actions build your baseline, and your baseline determines how you perform in bigger situations. If you are careless in small interactions, you will struggle in important ones. But if you are consistent in small moments, confidence becomes natural. You do not need to prepare for it. You live it. So start practicing in simple situations. Talk to people without pressure. Focus on being present. Focus on speaking clearly. Focus on listening fully. Over time, this becomes your default. And when it becomes your default, confidence is no longer something you try to achieve. It is something you naturally express. As you move forward, remember this. Confidence is not about becoming someone else. It is about removing what blocks your natural self. Remove the need to impress. Remove the fear of silence. Remove the pressure of perfection. What remains is clarity. What remains is presence. What remains is confidence. And that is more than enough. Because when you are clear, present, and steady, people feel it instantly. And that feeling is what creates lasting impressions. Chapter 4. Most people think conversations begin with words. They are wrong. Conversations begin with energy. Before a single sentence is spoken, something invisible is already being exchanged. It is your presence, your posture, your facial expression, your movement, your stillness, your eyes, your silence. All of it communicates. And often, it communicates more powerfully than anything you say. This is why some people can say very little and still leave a strong impression, while others speak a lot and are quickly forgotten. It is not about volume, it is about presence. Your body is always speaking. The question is whether it is supporting your words or contradicting them. If your words say confidence, but your body shows tension, people will believe your body. If your words are simple, but your body shows calm control, people will feel your confidence. The body does not lie. That is why mastering nonverbal communication is essential if you want to speak better instantly. Let us begin with posture. Posture is the foundation of physical confidence. When your posture is weak, your entire presence weakens. Slouched shoulders, lowered head, collapsed chest. These signals communicate uncertainty, low energy, and lack of self-assurance. You do not need to exaggerate your posture to appear confident. You simply need alignment. Stand straight, but not stiff. Keep your shoulders relaxed, not tight. Let your chest remain open, not forced. Your head should be level, not tilted downward. This alignment creates a natural sense of strength. It also affects how you feel internally. Your body and mind are connected. When your posture improves, your mental state follows. You feel more alert, more stable, more present. Now consider your movements. Uncontrolled movement is one of the clearest signs of nervousness. Constant shifting, random hand movements, touching your face repeatedly, adjusting your clothes unnecessarily. These actions signal discomfort. They make your presence feel unstable. Confidence, on the other hand, is reflected in controlled movement. This does not mean you become rigid. It means your movements have purpose. When you gesture, do it naturally and clearly. When you stand, stay grounded. When you move, move with awareness. Less movement, but more intentional. This creates a sense of control, and control creates trust. Now let us talk about eye contact. Eye contact is one of the most powerful tools in communication, yet it is often misunderstood. Too little eye contact makes you appear unsure or disengaged. Too much eye contact feels intense or uncomfortable. Confidence exists in balance. When you look at someone, do it with calmness. Do not stare aggressively. Do not look away quickly out of fear. Hold eye contact long enough to show presence. Then allow it to shift naturally. Think of it as a rhythm, not a fixed rule. This rhythm creates comfort. It shows that you are engaged without being overwhelming. Another important detail is your facial expression. Your face reflects your internal state. If your face is tense, people feel it. If your face is relaxed, people feel ease. You do not need to force expressions. Forced smiles are easy to detect. They create distance rather than connection. Instead, aim for neutrality with openness. A relaxed face, soft eyes, a natural expression. If a smile comes, let it be genuine. If it does not, do not force it. Authenticity always communicates more powerfully than performance. Now consider your space. The way you use physical space affects how others perceive you. If you shrink yourself, avoid space, or constantly step back, you signal hesitation. If you invade space aggressively, you create discomfort. Confidence is about balanced presence. Stand your ground without being rigid. Respect personal boundaries without shrinking. Take up your natural space comfortably. This creates a sense of stability, and stability is attractive. Now, let us move deeper. Your breathing. This is one of the most overlooked elements of communication. When you are nervous, your breathing becomes shallow and fast. This affects your voice, your clarity, and your presence. Your words may become rushed. Your tone may become unstable. But when your breathing is slow and controlled, everything changes. Your voice becomes steady. Your mind becomes clearer. Your body becomes more relaxed. Before and during conversations, become aware of your breath. Slow it down slightly. Let it be natural but controlled. This simple adjustment can transform how you sound and how you feel. Now, your voice. Your voice is not just sound. It is emotion carried through sound. People do not just hear your words, they feel your tone. A weak voice suggests doubt. A rushed voice suggests anxiety. A monotone voice suggests disengagement. A balanced voice creates connection. You do not need to change your natural voice. You need to refine how you use it. Speak at a steady pace. Avoid rushing through sentences. Let your words land, Allow slight pauses between ideas. This creates clarity. It also gives your listener time to process. Your tone should carry calmness. Not flat, not exaggerated, but natural. Let your voice rise and fall slightly with your meaning. This variation keeps attention alive. It makes your speech feel real. Now, here is an important insight. Nonverbal communication is not about adding more. It is about removing what weakens you. You do not need to learn complex gestures. You need to eliminate tension. Remove unnecessary movement. Remove rushed behavior. Remove forced expressions. What remains is natural confidence. And natural confidence is always more powerful than artificial techniques. Another critical aspect is timing. When you speak, when you pause, when you respond, all of this creates rhythm. Good communication has rhythm. It is not constant noise. It is a balance between speech and silence. Most people speak too quickly because they fear silence. But silence is not empty. Silence is space, and space creates impact. When you pause at the right moment, your words gain weight. When you allow silence, you show control. You show that you are not desperate to fill every gap. This is a subtle but powerful signal of confidence. Now, let us address a common mistake: trying to copy others. People often observe confident individuals and try to imitate their style, their gestures, their tone, their expressions. But imitation without understanding creates artificial behavior. It feels unnatural. And people sense it. Confidence is not about copying. It is about refining your own natural style, your way of speaking, your way of expressing, your way of being present. When you align your behavior with your natural personality, your communication becomes authentic, and authenticity builds trust faster than perfection. Another important element is awareness. Most people are not aware of how they come across. They do not notice their posture, their tone, their expressions. They operate on autopilot. But awareness gives you control. When you become aware of your body, your voice, your presence, you can adjust in real time. Not in a forced way, but in a conscious way. You can slow down when needed. You can relax when you feel tension. You can pause instead of rushing. This awareness is what separates average communication from powerful communication. Now understand this. Nonverbal communication does not replace words. It amplifies them. If your words are clear and your presence is strong, the impact multiplies. If your words are good, but your presence is weak, the impact reduces. Both must work together. That is how you create a complete impression. So the next time you meet someone, do not focus only on what you will say. Focus on how you will be. Be steady, be present, be controlled. Let your body support your message. Let your voice carry clarity. Let your silence create space. Because when your presence is strong, your words do not need to work as hard. They land naturally. They connect deeply, and they are remembered. In the end, people may forget your exact words, but they will always remember how you made them feel. And how you make people feel is shaped far more by your presence than your sentences. Master your presence, and your communication will transform without force. Because true confidence is not something you say, it is something you show. Chapter 5. Most people do not fail in conversations because they lack knowledge. They fail because they do not know how to begin. The first few moments of a conversation carry more weight than the rest combined. This is where impressions are solidified. This is where comfort is either built or broken. This is where the tone is set. And yet, this is exactly where most people hesitate. They overthink the opening. They search for the perfect line. They worry about how they will be perceived. And in that hesitation, they lose the moment. But here's the truth. Strong conversations do not begin with perfect lines. They begin with simple, confident openings. The goal is not to impress. The goal is to start. Once the conversation begins naturally, everything else becomes easier. The pressure reduces. The flow develops. The connection grows. So, instead of searching for something extraordinary, focus on something real. A simple greeting delivered with presence is more powerful than a clever line delivered with hesitation. When you meet someone, acknowledge them clearly. Look at them. Make brief, natural eye contact. Let your expression remain relaxed. Then, greet them in a calm, steady voice. Keep it simple. Clarity in the beginning creates comfort immediately. After the greeting, most people get stuck. They feel the need to say something impressive, something interesting, something that will instantly capture attention. This is unnecessary. The best way to continue a conversation is through observation. Use what is already present in the environment. Where you are. What is happening. The context you both share. This removes pressure. You are not inventing something new. You are responding to what already exists. For example, if you are at an event, you can refer to the event. If you are in a professional setting, you can refer to the work or situation. If you are meeting casually, you can refer to the moment itself. Simple observations feel natural because they are grounded in reality. They do not feel forced. And when something feels natural, it creates ease. Now, once the conversation begins, your next focus should be direction. Many conversations become awkward because they lack direction. They jump from topic to topic without structure. They lose focus. They fade quickly. But a strong conversation has a gentle direction. Not rigid, not controlled, but guided. And the best way to guide a conversation is through questions. But not just any questions. Thoughtful questions. Questions that invite the other person to share something meaningful. Avoid questions that can be answered with a single word. Instead of asking something that ends quickly, ask something that opens space. This encourages engagement. But remember, the purpose of a question is not just to ask. It is to listen. Once you ask, give your full attention. Let the other person speak without interruption. This builds comfort. Because when people feel heard, they feel valued. And when they feel valued, they open up more. This is how conversations deepen. Another important element is transition. Once a topic begins, allow it to develop naturally. Do not rush to change topics. Stay with the moment. Explore it. Respond to what is being said instead of forcing something new. This creates continuity, and continuity creates flow. Flow is what makes a conversation feel effortless. Now let us address a common mistake. Trying to carry the entire conversation alone. Many people feel that it is their responsibility to keep everything going. They think if the conversation slows down, it means they have failed. This creates pressure. And pressure leads to over-talking. But conversations are shared. Both people contribute. You do not need to fill every gap. Allow the other person to engage. Give them space to respond, to think, to speak. When you create space, the conversation becomes balanced. And balance creates comfort. Now consider your reactions. Your reactions shape the energy of the conversation. If someone shares something and you respond with low energy, the conversation weakens. If you respond with genuine interest, the conversation strengthens. Your reaction does not need to be exaggerated. It needs to be real. If something is interesting, show interest. If something is thoughtful, acknowledge it. If something is important, respond with attention. This creates emotional connection. And emotional connection is what people remember. Another key element is timing. Knowing when to speak and when to pause. If you speak too quickly, you interrupt the natural rhythm. If you wait too long, the moment may pass. Confidence is found in awareness. You sense the moment. You feel when to respond. This comes with practice, but it begins with presence. When you are fully present, timing becomes intuitive. Now let us talk about simplicity again. In the beginning of a conversation, simplicity is your greatest strength. Do not overload the interaction with information. Do not try to explain too much. Do not speak in long, complex sentences. Keep your communication clear and direct. This makes it easier for the other person to engage. And when engagement increases, the conversation grows naturally. Another important aspect is adaptability. Every person is different. Some people are more expressive. Some are more reserved. Some speak quickly. Some take their time. Your ability to adapt to different styles makes you a better communicator. If someone is calm, match their pace. If someone is energetic, adjust your energy slightly. This does not mean you lose yourself. It means you align enough to create comfort. Alignment builds connection. Now let us address something deeper, the fear of awkwardness. This fear controls many people in conversations. They believe that any pause, any silence, any small mistake will make the interaction awkward. But awkwardness is not created by silence. It is created by discomfort. If you remain calm during a pause, it does not feel awkward. If you become tense, it does. So instead of fearing awkward moments, learn to stay steady within them. If there is a brief silence, do not panic. Maintain your presence. Either the conversation will naturally continue, or you can gently guide it forward. There is no need to rush. Confidence allows space. Another powerful habit is observation. Observe how the other person responds. Are they engaged? Are they distracted? Are they comfortable? These signals help you adjust your approach. If they seem interested, continue. If they seem distant, simplify. If they seem hesitant, slow down. This awareness improves your communication instantly. Now understand this. A strong start does not guarantee a perfect conversation, but it creates the right conditions. It builds comfort. It reduces tension. It opens the door. And once the door is open, connection becomes possible. So the next time you meet someone, remember this. Start simple. Stay present. Use observation. Ask thoughtful questions. Listen fully. Allow space. Respond with clarity. Do not rush. Do not force. Let the conversation grow naturally. Because powerful conversations are not created by pressure. They are created by presence. And when you master the beginning, everything that follows becomes easier. Because the hardest part is not speaking well. It is starting well. And once you learn to start with confidence, you remove the biggest barrier in communication. Chapter 6. There is a point in every conversation where words stop being the main factor. From that moment onward, people are no longer judging what you say as much as they are sensing who you are. This shift is subtle, but it changes everything. At the beginning, communication is conscious. You think about sentences, structure, and delivery. You monitor yourself. You adjust. You calculate. But as the interaction continues, something deeper takes over. Presence. Presence is what remains when overthinking disappears. And this is where most people lose control without realizing it. They start strong. They say the right things. They follow basic communication principles. But as the conversation continues, they gradually slip back into self-consciousness. They begin to overanalyze again. Did I say that correctly? Do they like me? Was that awkward? Should I say something else? This internal commentary pulls them out of the moment. And the moment is where all communication actually happens. When you are not present, your responses become delayed. Your tone becomes inconsistent. Your energy becomes unstable. People feel this immediately, even if they cannot explain it. Because humans do not just listen to words. They read energy patterns. A confident person feels stable. An uncertain person feels unpredictable. And stability is what creates trust. Now the real challenge begins after the conversation has already started. Because starting is easy compared to maintaining flow. Maintaining flow requires internal control. Not control over the conversation itself, but control over your internal state. This is where emotional grounding becomes essential. Emotional grounding means staying steady regardless of how the conversation evolves. Whether it is smooth, slightly awkward, intense, or unpredictable, your internal state does not collapse. You remain centered. This does not mean you become robotic. It means you stop reacting emotionally to every small shift. Most people lose their confidence not because of what others say, but because of how they interpret it. A small silence feels like failure. A short response feels like rejection. A delayed reply feels like disinterest. But in reality, these are neutral events. They only gain meaning when you assign meaning to them. Confident communication comes from reducing unnecessary interpretation. You see things as they are, not as your fears suggest. Now let us go deeper into a core principle that separates average communicators from strong ones: internal pace control. Every person has an internal rhythm. Some people think fast, speak fast, react fast. Others are naturally slower and more deliberate. But confidence is not about being fast or slow. It is about being in control of your pace. If your internal pace is too fast, you rush your words, interrupt others, and lose clarity. If your internal pace is too slow without awareness, you may appear disconnected or disengaged. The ideal state is controlled rhythm. You adjust your pace based on the situation, not your anxiety. When you feel pressure, slow down. When the conversation needs energy, slightly increase engagement. When clarity is needed, simplify. When listening is required, pause internally and observe. This adaptability creates mastery. Now consider another essential element: mental silence. Most communication problems are not external. They are internal noise. People are not listening properly because they are thinking about their next sentence. They are not responding clearly because their mind is crowded. They are not present because they are mentally somewhere else. Mental silence does not mean stopping thought completely. It means reducing unnecessary thought during interaction. When someone is speaking, you are not planning your reply. You are absorbing their message. You are not judging your performance. You are understanding the moment. This shift transforms communication quality instantly. Because when your mind becomes quiet, your awareness increases. You notice tone changes. You notice emotional shifts. You notice subtle cues. And these details allow you to respond better than words alone can. Now let us talk about something very practical but deeply powerful: the way you respond after someone finishes speaking. This moment is often ignored, but it carries enormous weight. Most people rush to respond immediately. They feel silence is uncomfortable, so they fill it quickly. But confident communicators use a small pause, not long enough to feel unnatural, just enough to show thoughtfulness. This pause does something important. It shows that you are processing, not reacting. It gives your response more weight. And it prevents impulsive replies that can weaken your communication. After the pause, your response should be simple and relevant. Not exaggerated, not overly detailed, not forced, just clear. This clarity is what builds trust. Now let us address something many people struggle with: over-explaining. When people feel nervous, they tend to explain too much. They add unnecessary details. They repeat ideas. They try to justify their words. This weakens communication, because the more you explain, the less impact your message has. Strong communication is concise. It delivers meaning without excess. It allows the listener to engage instead of overwhelming them with information. Say what is needed, then stop. Let it settle. Now, another critical factor is emotional alignment. Every conversation has emotional tone beneath the surface. Some conversations are light. Some are serious. Some are neutral. Some are expressive. Your communication must align with this tone. If the situation is serious, your tone should reflect calmness and respect. If the situation is light, your tone can be relaxed. If the other person is emotional, you should not overpower them with logic immediately. You must first acknowledge their emotional state. This alignment creates understanding, and understanding creates connection. Now let us address something very important. People often believe confidence means always speaking. This is incorrect. Confidence is also knowing when not to speak. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is control. When you are comfortable with silence, you are no longer dependent on constant verbal output. You are stable even without speaking. This stability is powerful because it removes pressure. It also allows the other person to contribute more naturally. Balanced conversations are not dominated by one side. They are shared spaces. Now consider another layer: self-respect in communication. Many people lose confidence because they adjust themselves too much to be liked. They over-agree. They over-apologize. They avoid expressing their true opinion. This creates internal tension. Because when you constantly suppress your authentic voice, you lose presence. Self-respect does not mean being rigid or disagreeable. It means not abandoning your voice for approval. You can be polite and still be clear. You can be respectful and still express your thoughts. You can disagree without becoming aggressive. This balance is maturity. Now let us talk about recovery. Because not every moment will go perfectly. Sometimes you will say something awkward. Sometimes you will lose your train of thought. Sometimes the conversation will feel slightly off. This is normal. Confidence is not about avoiding mistakes. It is about recovering smoothly. If something goes wrong, do not overreact. Do not panic. Simply continue. The more you normalize mistakes, the less power they have over you. People do not judge perfection. They judge how you handle imperfection. A calm recovery builds more respect than a flawless performance. Now let us bring everything together. Strong communication is not built on one skill. It is built on a system: presence, pace control, emotional grounding, clarity, listening, awareness, simplicity. When these elements work together, communication becomes effortless. Not because it is easy, but because you are aligned internally. So when you speak with someone, remember this: you do not need to be impressive. You need to be stable. You do not need to be perfect. You need to be present. You do not need to control everything. You need to stay aware. Because in the end, people do not remember every word you said. They remember how it felt to be around you. And that feeling is created not by what you say, but by who you are when you say it. Chapter 7. There is a deeper level of communication that most people never reach. It is not about speaking better. It is not about body language. It is not even about confidence in the usual sense. It is about influence without effort. This is the point where your presence starts doing most of the work for you. People begin to listen more carefully. They respond more openly. They feel more comfortable around you. And you notice something important. You are no longer forcing connection. It is happening naturally. This is not luck. It is the result of internal alignment. Because at this stage, communication is no longer something you do. It becomes something you are. But reaching this level requires removing several invisible barriers that block natural influence. The first barrier is internal tension. Most people do not realize how much tension they carry in everyday interactions. Tension in the jaw, tension in the shoulders, tension in the voice, tension in the mind. This tension creates resistance in communication. Even if your words are correct, tension makes them feel heavy. People may not consciously notice it, but they feel it. And when people feel tension, they subconsciously reduce openness. That is why some conversations feel smooth, and others feel forced even when nothing is wrong externally. To move beyond this, you must learn a simple but powerful principle. Ease creates influence, not effort. Not intensity. Ease. Ease is not laziness. Ease is control without pressure. It is the ability to stay relaxed while remaining fully aware. Now observe something carefully. When you are around a genuinely confident person, you feel relaxed. Not because they are doing anything special, but because they are not creating pressure in the environment. Their presence does not demand anything from you. This is why people naturally open up to them. They feel safe. Safety is the foundation of influence. Now let us go deeper into how this is created. It begins with your internal state before speaking. If your mind is tight, your communication becomes tight. If your mind is open, your communication becomes open. So the first step is always internal relaxation, not forced relaxation. Natural relaxation. A state where you are not mentally resisting anything. You are not trying to control every outcome. You are simply present. Now let us talk about one of the most powerful communication principles. Low-pressure presence. This means you do not place pressure on yourself or on the conversation. You are not trying to achieve a result from every interaction. You are not trying to be liked by everyone. You are not trying to prove your intelligence. You are not trying to fix the conversation. You are simply participating in it. When you remove pressure, something interesting happens. Your behavior becomes more natural. Your tone becomes more stable. Your words become more precise. Because pressure is what distorts communication. Now let us address another important factor. Expectation management. Most communication anxiety comes from expectations. People expect themselves to be interesting. They expect others to respond positively. They expect conversations to go smoothly. But reality does not always match expectation. And when there is a gap between expectation and reality, discomfort appears. Confident communicators reduce expectation. They do not assume perfect outcomes. They accept variability. Some conversations will be great. Some will be average. Some will be short. Some will not go anywhere. And all of that is fine. This mindset removes emotional dependency. Now let us move into something more practical. The art of conversational direction. A strong communicator does not randomly jump between topics. They guide the flow subtly, not by control, but by awareness. They notice what the other person is interested in. They notice where energy increases. They follow that direction naturally. This creates momentum, and momentum keeps conversations alive. Weak communication lacks direction. It feels scattered. It moves without purpose. Strong communication has flow. Flow does not mean structure. It means natural progression. One idea leads to another without force. Now consider another important concept. Emotional pacing. Every person has emotional speed. Some people open up quickly. Some take time. Some are expressive. Some are reserved. If you rush someone emotionally, they withdraw. If you match their pace, they relax. Emotional pacing means adjusting your communication speed to match the other person's comfort level. This is not manipulation. This is awareness. Now let us talk about silence again, but at a deeper level. Silence is not just a gap between words. Silence is a tool of influence. When used correctly, silence increases impact. When you pause before responding, your words gain weight. When you allow silence after speaking, your message settles. When you are comfortable in silence, you appear grounded. Most people fear silence because they associate it with failure. But silence is only uncomfortable when the mind is unstable. When the mind is stable, silence feels natural. Now let us explore something most people misunderstand. Being interesting is not the goal of communication. Being interested is. When you focus on being interesting, you become self-conscious. When you focus on being interested, you become present. And presence is what makes you naturally engaging. People are drawn to those who are genuinely attentive, not those who are trying to impress. Now consider another layer. Energy consistency. One of the biggest mistakes in communication is inconsistent energy. People start strong, then fade, or they begin calm, then suddenly become overly expressive. This creates unpredictability, and unpredictability reduces trust. Stable energy creates comfort, not extreme energy. Not flat energy, balanced energy. Now, let us talk about subtle influence. Influence is not loud. It is not dominant. It is not forceful. Real influence is subtle alignment. It happens when people start to match your calmness, your pace, your clarity. Without realizing it, they adjust to your communication style. This happens when your internal state is steady enough that others naturally synchronize with you. Now let us address a final important principle in this chapter: non-reactive communication. Most people react immediately to everything. They respond emotionally. They interrupt themselves mentally. They rush their replies. Non-reactive communication means you create space between stimulus and response. You hear something. You process it. Then you respond. This space is where intelligence appears. Without space, communication becomes impulsive. With space, communication becomes intentional. Now bring everything together. Influence is not something you add. It is something you stop blocking. You stop blocking it by removing tension. You stop blocking it by reducing pressure. You stop blocking it by slowing down your internal pace. You stop blocking it by listening fully. You stop blocking it by allowing silence. You stop blocking it by staying present. And when all these blocks are removed, something natural emerges. A calm, grounded, effortless presence that people trust without explanation. This is the deeper level of communication, not performed, not forced, not learned as a script, but expressed naturally from within. And when you reach this stage, you no longer think about how to impress people, because you realize something very simple. Real communication was never about impressing anyone. It was about being fully present in the moment, without resistance, without fear, and without trying to become someone else. And that alone changes everything. Chapter 8. There is a moment in communication where technique stops being useful. At this point, you already know how to start a conversation. You understand presence, posture, voice, silence, listening, and emotional pacing. You are no longer a beginner. But something new begins to appear. Inconsistency. Some conversations go well. Some feel awkward. Some feel effortless. Some feel forced. And you start to wonder why. This is where most people get stuck. They assume they still need more techniques, more rules, more strategies. But the problem is no longer lack of knowledge. The problem is inconsistency in state, because communication is not a fixed skill like mathematics. It is a live expression of your internal condition in the moment. If your internal state is stable, your communication becomes stable. If your internal state fluctuates, your communication fluctuates. This is the deeper layer most people never master. Now understand something very important. Confidence is not a permanent personality trait. It is a moment-to-moment condition. You do not become confident forever. You return to confidence repeatedly by regulating your internal state. This is why even confident people sometimes feel off in conversations. Not because they lost skill, but because their internal alignment changed. So the real question is not how to become confident once. The real question is how to return to clarity quickly. Now, let us break this down. The first pillar is emotional reset. Before any interaction, your mind carries residue from previous thoughts, stress from work, random worries, social pressure, internal noise. If you enter a conversation with this residue, it affects your presence. So the first step is not speaking, it is clearing. A simple mental reset. You do not need complex meditation techniques. You simply acknowledge your current state and release it. You stop carrying unnecessary mental weight into the interaction. This creates space, and space is where clarity lives. Now let us move into another important principle: identity pressure. One of the biggest hidden problems in communication is the pressure to maintain an identity. People think they must always appear smart, always appear confident, always appear interesting, always appear composed. This creates internal stress, because now every interaction becomes a performance. But real communication does not require identity maintenance. You do not need to maintain an image. You only need to be present. The moment you drop identity pressure, your behavior becomes flexible. You can be calm without trying to look calm. You can be expressive without trying to look impressive. You can be silent without feeling awkward. Now, let us go deeper. Flow disruption. Flow is a natural state of communication where everything feels smooth and unforced. But flow is fragile. It breaks easily when the mind becomes self-aware again. The moment you start thinking about how you are performing, flow collapses. So the goal is not to create flow. The goal is to stop interrupting it. Flow already exists naturally in human interaction. You only interfere with it through overthinking. Now consider this carefully. Every time you overanalyze yourself during a conversation, you step out of flow. Every time you focus on impression instead of connection, you step out of flow. Every time you rush your words, you step out of flow. So mastery is not addition, it is subtraction. Remove interference. Now, let us talk about conversational grounding. Grounding means staying anchored in the present moment regardless of internal fluctuations. Even if your mind is slightly anxious, you do not let it control your behavior. Even if you feel uncertain, you continue speaking calmly. Even if you make a mistake, you remain steady. Grounding is emotional stability in action. It is not emotional suppression. It is emotional non-dependence. Now we move to a critical idea: micro-recovery. In conversations, things will not always go perfectly. You might lose a word. You might pause awkwardly. You might say something unclear. The difference between average and advanced communicators is not avoidance of these moments. It is recovery. Micro-recovery means you correct yourself smoothly without drama. You do not panic. You do not over-explain. You simply adjust and continue. This skill alone makes you appear far more confident than perfect speakers who cannot handle small disruptions. Now, let us talk about attention direction again, but deeper. In every conversation, your attention can go in two directions: inward or outward. Inward attention creates self-consciousness. Outward attention creates connection. When you focus inward, you monitor yourself. When you focus outward, you understand others. So the goal is simple. Stay outwardly focused, not artificially. Naturally, by becoming genuinely interested in what is in front of you. Now, let us address emotional balance in conversations. Many people swing between extremes: too serious or too casual, too expressive or too flat, too reactive or too passive. But strong communication exists in balance. Balanced emotion does not mean dull communication. It means stable expression. You are not overly affected by every small change in tone or situation. You remain centered. Now consider conversational patience. Most people rush outcomes. They want immediate connection, immediate approval, immediate comfort. But human connection takes time. Trust builds gradually. When you remove urgency, conversations become lighter. When you remove pressure, people open up more naturally. Patience creates space for authenticity. Now let us explore subtle dominance, but in a healthy form. True communication strength is not loud dominance. It is calm authority. It is the ability to remain steady regardless of external behavior. If someone is nervous, you stay calm. If someone is energetic, you stay grounded. If someone is silent, you stay comfortable. This internal stability creates influence without effort. People naturally align with stable energy. Now let us bring attention to something often ignored: conversation endings. Most people do not manage exits well. They either end too abruptly or linger too long. But endings matter because they shape memory. A confident ending is simple: no over-explaining, no awkward prolonging, no forced continuation. You recognize the natural end of interaction and exit smoothly. This leaves a strong impression because it shows emotional control. Now we bring all principles together: internal stability, low-pressure mindset, outward attention, emotional grounding, simple communication, controlled pace, non-reactive behavior. These are not separate techniques. They are one system, a system of presence. When this system becomes your default, communication stops feeling like a task. It becomes natural expression. You no longer prepare to be confident. You simply return to stability. And from that stability, everything else flows. Because in the end, communication is not about what you say first. It is about the state you bring into the moment before you say anything at all. And when that state is steady, your words no longer need to work hard. They simply reflect who you already are in that moment. Chapter 9. There comes a point where learning communication is no longer about improvement. It becomes about integration. Everything you have read, understood, and reflected on starts to settle beneath conscious effort. You no longer think step by step. You no longer recall rules during conversation. You no longer mentally track posture, tone, pauses, or eye contact. Instead, something quieter takes over. Awareness. And awareness is different from technique. Technique is something you apply. Awareness is something you live. At this stage, communication stops feeling like a skill you are practicing and starts feeling like a natural extension of your presence. But before this becomes stable, there is one final internal barrier that must be addressed: attachment to performance. Even after understanding confidence, presence, silence, and clarity, many people still carry a subtle desire to do it right. They want conversations to go perfectly. They want to sound impressive without trying. They want to never feel awkward again. They want control over outcomes. But communication does not offer control over outcomes. It only offers control over presence. And when you shift your focus from outcome to presence, something profound happens. You stop resisting the moment. You start inhabiting it. Now everything simplifies. You are no longer trying to build an image. You are no longer trying to maintain an identity. You are no longer trying to win social approval in real time. You are simply here. And being here fully is enough. This is the final stage of confident communication. Not perfection, not dominance, not scripted excellence, but relaxed awareness. Now, let us bring together everything that has been built across this journey. You learned that first impressions are created before words. You learned that presence speaks louder than sentences. You learned that attention directed outward removes anxiety. You learned that listening is more powerful than speaking. You learned that simplicity creates clarity. You learned that silence is not weakness but control. You learned that emotional stability defines influence. You learned that pressure destroys flow, while ease creates it. You learned that mistakes do not break confidence, but overreaction does. And most importantly, you learned that communication is not something you perform. It is something that emerges when internal resistance disappears. Now, if you strip everything down to its core, all of communication can be understood in one idea. The quality of your presence determines the quality of your expression. Not vocabulary, not technique, not strategy. Presence. When your presence is unstable, even perfect words lose impact. When your presence is stable, even simple words carry weight. This is why some people can say very little and still leave a lasting impression, and others can speak endlessly and be forgotten immediately. The difference is not effort, it is state. So the final instruction is not to try harder. It is to become quieter internally, not silent externally, but quiet internally. A mind that is not constantly judging itself. A mind that is not rushing ahead of the moment. A mind that is not trying to control every outcome. From that quietness, clarity emerges naturally. And from clarity, communication becomes effortless. Now understand something important. You will not always feel perfect. There will still be moments of hesitation. There will still be conversations that feel slightly off. There will still be times when you do not say exactly what you wanted to say. But none of that defines your ability. What defines you is your return. How quickly you come back to presence after disturbance. How quickly you reset after uncertainty. How quickly you let go of overthinking and re-enter the moment. This is real mastery. Not never failing, but never staying disconnected. So as you close this book, do not hold it as a set of rules. Hold it as a reminder. A reminder that you were never meant to become someone else in conversation. You were only meant to remove the noise that blocks your natural clarity. Because beneath all hesitation, all overthinking, all pressure to perform, there has always been a simpler version of you. Clear, present, aware, and already enough. So when you meet someone next time, do not search for perfection. Do not search for the perfect words. Do not search for approval in real time. Just arrive fully. See clearly. Listen deeply. Speak simply. And leave without resistance. Because the moment you stop trying to impress, you begin to influence. And the moment you begin to influence without effort, communication becomes what it was always meant to be: natural, human, and real.